If you came back, then you must have found something, correct? Natalia asked the witch June. Yes, June laughed. She looked very pleased. Did you hire her? Ruby asked Natalia. Natalia nodded in agreement. Oh, I vaguely remember she said that, but I was really busy at the time, Sasha said. June rolled her eyes when she heard Sasha's words. She thought, of course you were busy, you were sucking your husband's blood. Lady Ruby, what are you doing here? June asked. Can't I be at my darling's house? Ruby asked in a cold tone. Yes, you... Huh? June opened her mouth in shock as she looked at Ruby. What you said? I think I heard wrong. June wiped her ear a little. Ruby raised an eyebrow. What? Is it so amazing, me being in a relationship? I don't think she's talking about that, Sasha commented. Huh? Ruby didn't understand. She looked at Sasha and only saw her friend's neutral face. June looked at Ruby and then she looked at Sasha. She repeated this process a few times and thought, as expected, my intuition was correct. That man has a great future. Her eyes changed to the money symbol. Seeing June's reaction, Natalia knew what the greedy witch was thinking. June, what did you find out? Huh? Oh, give me a sec. She made some gestures with her hand and soon a big magic circle appeared in the middle of the room. The magic circle began to grow and slowly images began to be created. Oh, Natalia looked at the magic circle with interest. Soon the image of Lucy and Karen appeared in the magic circle. June points to Lucy and starts her report. Lucy, a noble vampire sought out by the Inquisition. Personality, liar, cautious, cunning, proud, and hard-working. He has a love affair with his partner, Karen, a vampire who pretends to be Lucy's subordinate, but the woman's true identity is a noble talent scout. The image shifted and focused only on Karen. Oh, Ruby is interested. She looks at Karen. Which clan does she serve? June looked at Ruby. She serves Clan Horseman. Who? I've never heard of it, Ruby said. Neither have I, Sasha added. Excuse my rude words, but are you living in a cave? June commented in disbelief. Well, we've been busy these days. Sasha didn't mind and replied. Yes, a lot happened in a short time, Ruby added. I sighed. This information will be free. Consider it a kind gesture. She looked at Sasha. The Horseman clan is the family that took the title Vampire Count from Lady Sasha's family. What? Sasha opened her eyes wide. Ruby's eyes cooled further and she looked at June. How do you know that? That was supposed to be confidential information, Natalia asked curiously. Ha! There's no such thing as a confidential subject when it comes to witches, June snorted. In the witch world, anything can be bought with money, even that kind of information, she smiled and continued. It cost me a lot of money, but I managed to get in touch with the witch the Horseman clan hired, and she sold all the details. Natalia just continued with the same gentle smile on her face and didn't answer anything. Witch, I have a question for you. June felt her body shiver as she heard Ruby's words. What? Did you sell the information on my darling? The air around Ruby started to grow colder, and slowly her eyes began to change to blood red. Answer me. No, I didn't sell any information about Victor. I'm not a fool. I don't want to provoke that crazy woman. Ruby continued to stare at June. She was looking for some lie in the witch's face, but all she saw was genuine fear. Sasha has woken up from her stupor and looks at June with neutral eyes. You also know about Scathach kidnapping my husband. Yes, I know. A few hours ago I received a contact from an informant who spotted Countess Scathach carrying a man like a sack of potatoes to her residence, and from the characteristics of the man the informant gave me, I could deduce that it was Victor, although after that I lost contact with this informant. I think you should give up on this informant. He's probably buried 7 feet under the earth now. Ruby spoke in the same tone of voice. She controlled her emotions, and slowly the air around her started to return to normal. Yes, I know Scathach's personality. The crazy woman is just too famous. He probably died. I need to find another informant in the vampire world. June is a talented witch, too. Few witches can do what she did now. Thank you. June flashed a satisfied smile. Ruby and Sasha just rolled their eyes when they saw June's smile. So, what did you find out about Lucy? Natalia asked. June makes a few gestures with her hand, and slowly the image of Lucy and Karen changes, and soon a huge coffin appears. The coffin was pure white, with a black crucifix symbol in the middle of the coffin. What is that? Sasha asked. This is the finger of Saint Mary, June replied. Then she continued. A sacred church artifact. That's all I know. I couldn't find anything else. For me to know the contents inside that coffin, I would need to take more risks. I would also need more money and connections that I don't have right now. This job is way above what I'm able to offer. I don't want to risk my neck and provoke the Horseman clan. The money offered is just too low for me to take that risk, she thought. As Lady Natalia paid a high price, I compensated these services with all of Lucy's information and what he's planning to do. She took a flash drive from her pocket and threw it in Natalia's direction. This is all I can do with my current abilities. She was surprisingly honest. You did more than enough, June, Natalia spoke with a gentle smile on her face. She takes a cell phone from her pocket, types something on the cell phone, and says, "Done." June feels her cell phone vibrating in her pocket. She quickly takes her cell phone. When she sees that the money has fallen into her account, she starts drooling while staring at the number on her cell phone screen. 10 digits! Holy fuck! She cried out in emotion. June, you're drooling, Natalia commented. Oh. She quickly wipes her face and looks at Natalia suspiciously. Why did you pay me more than agreed? I will not refund the money. With the same gentle smile on her face, Natalia said, This money is for another job. Oh? What's the job? June was looking at Natalia as if she were a golden hen. I want you to investigate the Horseman clan for Lady Sasha. Huh? June's face darkened in horror. Suddenly, the gentle smile on Natalia's face seemed to become an evil smile. That was a trap. I will die. From the rumors I've heard from that clan, I'm 100% sure I'm going to die. They are crazy. Natalia, Sasha didn't understand why she did it. Natalia looked at Sasha. I know Lady Sasha is curious about the matter, and with your family's current situation, you can't hire a witch for that kind of service. Thank you, Natalia. I'll remember that, Sasha thanked. Ruby crosses her legs and looks at Natalia with curious eyes. She was thinking of doing this for Sasha. After all, Ruby doesn't lack money, but as Natalia took the initiative, she was silent. This maid had a plan, too. Natalia kept smiling. She looked at June, who had a face that looked like she made the biggest mistake of her life. You already received the money, right? And a witch who accepted the payment can't go back, right? Tell me, are you going to break the rules? Ugh. June seemed to fade when she saw Natalia's gentle smile. But there's another witch in that place. Because of that, I can't do this job. After all, it would break rule number 1 about being a witch. With the same smile on her face, Natalia said, Rule number 1, a witch must not come in conflict with another witch. If the witch's employer is an enemy of an individual who is hiring another witch, both witches must abandon their duty immediately. June's face just darkened, and it darkened more every time she heard Natalia's words. Strange, she put on a confused face. Did I ever tell you to come into conflict with the Horseman clan? She looked at June and smiled kindly. I remember what I said. I want you to investigate the Horseman clan for Lady Sasha. At no time did I tell you to attack them or something, did I? No, you didn't say. See? I expect good news from you. Ugh. Seeing Natalia's gentle smile, June seemed to have received several damages to her body. Not wanting to stay in this place anymore, she makes a few gestures with her hands, and soon a magic circle appears at her feet. Strange. When June left, silence fell in the room. You're amazingly evil for someone who always has a kind smile on their face, Maria said, who was silent. Oh? Natalia looked at Maria.
I have to agree with Maria on this, Ruby said. By asking her to investigate the Horseman clan, conflict will eventually ensue. However, as I am not your master, I cannot order you. I hope that you know what you're doing. Understanding the warning contained in Ruby's words, she spoke, I know. Don't worry, Lady Ruby. Soon she looked at Maria. What happened? I thought you were going to be silent forever. Nothing happened, Maria said in a cold tone. Then she continued, I was just curious about the sacred artifact. I see, Natalia said and then walked towards a table, and when she got close to the table saw a laptop she used when she was bored. She sits on the chair. Let's see what's inside this flash drive. Sasha looked at Maria. I don't know what that artifact is, and I don't care either, but one thing I'm sure of. Her smile widened in a distorted way. Carlos is looking for that artifact. Maria reacted a little when she heard Carlos's name. She looks at Sasha, and seeing the look on her face, she sighed. I don't regret setting a trap and killing that maid. After all, that was just work. Sasha looked at Maria neutrally, but pure hatred could be seen in her eye.
Maria looked at Sasha and continued, I don't know about the other vampire hunters, but for Carlos and me, we just treated it like a job. We had no personal grudge or special reason to hunt vampires. Carlos and I grew up in a poor area of New Jersey, Camden. We were both orphans. Ruby and Natalia looked at Maria with curiosity. 2 orphans surviving on the street, we could barely survive day to day, and to make matters worse, I was a girl. She spoke the last part with a bit of hatred. What would eventually happen to me was obvious. I could only maintain my purity because Carlos defended me tooth and nail. He was always more developed than the people around. Despite being only 10 years old, he was stronger and faster than an ordinary human. At the time, I didn't know. I just came to find out what this abnormality of Carlos was in the future. He was a man who had the potential that the priests talked about so much. He could more easily access the energy of God. To access this power, you need to have faith in something. I don't know what Carlos's faith was when he was younger, he never told me. But one thing was undeniable, he was strong. She sighed. We survived on the street. For 13 years, we stole, we killed for each other. We survived. Until one day, a priest approached us and offered us shelter. At first, we didn't believe in the priest, but something happened that made us trust the priest. She made a face that said she didn't want to talk too much about this. It was in that church that the priest discovered Carlos's potential. I remember that at the time the priest seemed very happy. Of course, I was happy for Carlos too, but I was also afraid. I was afraid of separating from him. I also auditioned to find out if I had the potential to become a slayer, and unfortunately I didn't have the same potential as Carlos, but I had something more special. She looked at Sasha, and slowly her blue eyes darkened. I had faith. I had faith in Carlos, and because of that faith, I was able to use the hunter's powers, despite not believing in God. I believed in Carlos. For me, he was my God. Maria makes a gesture with her hand, and then strands, almost invisible to the naked eye, began to dance around as if protecting her. My power is much weaker than common hunters, especially if I'm comparing my power to Carlos, but one thing is for sure, if a vampire is trapped by my threads, it's an arduous task to break free. Because of that, I knew I needed to be smarter and work on trapping. I was the brain, and Carlos was the muscle. They remained silent for a moment. Is this supposed to move me or something? Sasha asked neutrally with the same look. No. Maria denied it. She undid her power and looked at Sasha. All I did was to survive. The hunting job was good, and we just had to kill the monsters of the church, and in return we would earn a lot of money. But, living a little with you and observing your daily life, I could see that you are no different from humans. There was a moment of silence. Sometimes a thought pops into my head. Could I have done things differently? She spoke and continued.
But when I look back on my living conditions, I realized that I had no other alternative. Either I would become a hunter and earn enough money to be independent, or I would enter the criminal world. After all, I already had hands stained with human blood. And I don't regret the decisions I made. I did what I did just to survive. And now I'm suffering the consequences of my actions. But, she bites her lip, but just don't kill Carlos, please. He's all I have left. Small tears threatened to fall from Maria's face. Sasha looked at Maria with a neutral face. Ruby and Natalia looked at Sasha and waited for her answer. Just imagine, Sasha started to speak. She took a deep breath and held the hatred in her heart that threatened to explode. Maria continued to look at Sasha. Just imagine you went out to solve a little problem with your friends. Then when the problem is solved, you decide to return home, and the moment you enter your home, your precious home that should be the safest place, a place for you to lie down and relax, you find the dead body of your God. Maria was silent. And if that wasn't enough, imagine that the enemy who killed your precious God just did it because it was a job? Tell me. Sasha's eyes were glowing blood red. How would you feel? Maria remained silent. She bit her lip and didn't answer Sasha's question. Unable to hold the hate in her heart, lightning began to cover Sasha's body, and she roared, "Tell me, how would you feel?" Ugh! Ruby and Natalia put their hands over their ears when they hear the lightning noise. Maria bit her lip harder and responded in a troubled but honest voice. "I would feel hate. I would feel a sense of loss. I would feel empty," she replied. "Would you forgive the murderer of your precious God?" "I wouldn't." Maria clenched her fists tightly, but in the end she just sighed and felt very tired. "See? Now you understand me," Sasha spoke in a neutral tone with a distorted smile of hate. Maria didn't answer anymore. She just turned and walked towards the kitchen. Sasha continued to watch Maria's back until she was out of her sight. "Natalia?" She lowered her face a little and her blonde hair covered her face. "Yes, Lady Sasha?" "Open the gate to Ruby's house," she spoke neutrally. Natalia nods and snaps her finger. "Done." Sasha nods. She gets up from the couch and walks to the door. "I'm going ahead, Ruby," she spoke without turning her back. "Okay, I'll go after I get some business done at college." Sasha opened the door and soon a galaxy-like portal appeared. Sasha entered the portal and soon disappeared from the two women's view. When Sasha left, Ruby spoke aloud to herself. "In the end, there is no good and bad. There are only the consequences of your actions, huh? It looks like you are correct, Mother."
Lady Ruby, something happened? Ruby looks at Natalia. Nothing happened. I'm going to sleep a bit, and I'm a little tired. Ruby gets up from the couch and walks towards the exit. Natalia gets up from her chair and walks towards the kitchen. By the time she enters the kitchen, she sees Maria kneeling on the floor in a fetal position. She was in a corner of the kitchen crying silently. Sigh. She sighed and said to herself in a low voice, "I'm not good with these sentimental things." Current location, Lucy's hideout. Karen walked into Lucy's office and said, "We've been compromised." However, she didn't look worried. Indeed, this was to be expected. So, what data did the attacker steal? Lucy, who was sitting in a chair behind an office desk, spoke. "Only our basic plans." "Good," Lucy smiled. "Do we know about our little mouse?" "We couldn't register anything. The intruder suddenly appeared and disappeared with the data," Karen replied. Lucy puts his hand on his chin. Beings able to go underground in a building and walk through an armored vault without being detected. Witches. And it's not just any witch, he said. "Indeed, I had the same conclusion," Karen replied. Lucy shrugged. "Well, wolves would leave more trails, and noble vampires capable of doing something like that would just storm through the front door. Witches would be the most obvious conclusion."
Lucy showed a slight smile on his face. Our plan is almost complete. Soon we will have the power to join the nobility of vampires. Karen nodded. Then she spoke. The Horseman clan has sent reinforcements. Oh, they will finally act. I think they are desperate for allies. Yes, they are. Lucy looked at Karen. Why that face? Something happened? He asked. Yes, it's okay. I just feel that something is wrong, she said. Why? The reinforcement that Clan Horseman has sent are the 3 heir sons of the clan. Huh. Lucy didn't understand. What is that man thinking? Why did he send his children to this place? Lucy asked out loud as he tapped his finger on the table. Maybe for protection, deduced Karen. They've won everything that belongs to Clan Folger, but Clan Folger's allies are surprisingly loyal to that woman. I've also heard rumors that that woman's sister is planning a game against Clan Horseman. There are rumors that Countess Agnes Snow is not satisfied with this gross shift in power. What are the movements of the royal family? He asked. Uncertain. I think they're going to be neutral about all of this. He's being attacked from all sides, huh? Lucy spoke after thinking a little. Yes, Karen replied. Well, no matter what that man's plan is, we just have to hurry our preparations and complete the ritual. I don't want to share the artifact's power with those heirs, Lucy replied with a greedy smile. Me neither, Karen replied with the same smile as Lucy. Darling! A woman's voice was heard throughout the forest. That voice, Kaguya whispered. Fway? Pepper was startled by the sudden voice. Victor stops what he's doing and looks in one direction with a smile on his face. Then he opens his arms and waits patiently. What is he doing? Lacus asked curiously. Kaguya looked at Lacus and replied in a neutral tone. Taming a stalker. Huh? Lacus didn't understand. Something is coming at a fast speed, Pepper warned in a gentle tone. Before Lacus could ask Pepper anything, a long, white-haired rocket hit Victor. Boom! Victor was thrown towards the trees, which broke with relative ease, but throughout the shock of the white rocket, he never stopped smiling. Lying on the forest floor, he lifted his head and looked into Violet's face. Then he said, "Welcome back, honey." He ignored the small deforestation this reunion had caused. He lifts his arm, then starts stroking Violet's hair. 11, 11, 11. Violet's face took on a crazed expression. Ah, darling! She puts her face on Victor's chest and continues to talk like a broken record that repeated the same words over and over again. Darling, darling, darling! Victor just continued stroking Violet's hair with a smile on his face. I missed you, he said. Me too. I was worried that these... Before she could finish, she heard someone's words. Oh yeah, who are you? Lacus asked. Tss. Violet looked at Lacus with an ugly expression, but soon her expression became calmer when she felt Victor's caresses. Lady Violet, you took longer than expected, Kaguya said. Violet looked at Kaguya, then she smiled. Good job, Kaguya, as expected of you. I'm going to raise your salary. Kaguya exhibited a small smile and placed her hand respectfully on her chest. Your words are an honor, Lady Violet. Victor sits on the floor, hugs Violet, and starts to smell her. Then he smells an unknown smell. A man. He! Pepper seems startled by something and she quickly hides behind her sister. What is it? Lacus asked, looking at her sister. Nothing. Pepper refused to speak. Tell me, honey, did you meet anyone on the way here? Violet turns her face to Victor, and suddenly her body shudders, but it wasn't out of fear, it was something else. She flashes a big, distorted smile and replies, Yes, I found my father and mother. Oh, Victor's face returned to normal, and he smiled gently. How was your visit to your family? He started stroking her head again. Violet thinks for a moment and replies, "My mom is still a narcissistic bitch and my dad is still sick." Oh, Victor didn't know what to say when he heard Violet, but he had a doubt. Can vampires get sick? "And my dad wants to meet you. Is that okay with you?" She looked a little hesitant. It's all right. This is a good opportunity to meet your family." He spoke lightly. "I see." She flashed a happy smile. "But before that, I should get back to training." Victor stood up while holding Violet like a princess. Then he leaves her on the ground and looks at Lacus. "Let's continue?" Lacus exhibited a thirsty smile and said, "Of course." Victor walks to where he was, with Lacus following him. Did I miss something?" Violet asked as she looked at Lacus with dark eyes. "Lady Violet, calm down first," Kaguya said. "Huh? I'm calm. Look at my face. I'm calm, all right." She smiled with her sharp teeth bared. Kaguya took a long breath and placed a hand on her brow. "Lord Victor is training with Lady Lacus. We found that the best way for him to learn the basics is through fighting," Kaguya began to explain. "Oh, explain more." Violet was interested. "We did a lot of tests with Victor, but in the end he can't learn by logic," Pepper replied in Kaguya's place. Violet looked at Pepper, and when she looked at Pepper's breasts, clicked her tongue in annoyance. Why does all that witch's family have these big breasts? They're not even her real daughters. "Darling, isn't Victor stupid? Why isn't he learning by logic?" Violet asked as she tried to ignore Pepper's melons swaying with every simple move she made.
"Darling!" Pepper's face turned red, and as smoke started to come out of her head, she began to mutter at supernatural speed. She seemed to enter her own world. Question mark? Violet didn't understand Pepper's reaction. "Yes, Lord Victor is not stupid, but he is very different from ordinary noble vampires," Kaguya continued. "I know he's not normal. After all, he's my darling." Violet displayed a proud smile. Kaguya holds back the urge to sigh again and continues. "When noble vampires go to do an action that for our species would be commonplace, they succeed naturally, right?" "Yes." Violet remembers that it was the same with her. "Lord Victor doesn't work like that. If he tries to do a simple action, some explosion of power will always happen. He looks like a battery that contains a lot of power and never gets discharged. Because of that, he can't control his power to learn the basic skills." Boom! Victor was suddenly thrown into the sky by Lacus. "Ha ha ha ha! He seems to be enjoying himself." Violet was a little annoyed. While he was in the sky, he suddenly made a move. Victor kicked the air and launched himself towards the ground, and when he did that, Violet could see that pure fire had gone out as he kicked the air. And when he was falling towards the ground, his body started to be covered by lightning, and when he landed on the ground, a little ice explosion happened. "What in the seven hells was that?" Violet asked in disbelief. As Lady Violet can see, any small actions Victor does, he unconsciously releases his powers, and because of that, he can't learn the basic skills of a vampire. Kaguya looks at Victor struggling with a small shock in her heart. Didn't he notice? He's combining his powers perfectly. Is that what people call a genius? Victor went into combat again with Lacus. The red-haired vampire had a slight smile on her face as she used only her physical strength to fight, although sometimes she had to use her fog powers to defend herself from the flames Victor unleashed. After all, these flames were dangerous even to her, who was a vampire that was over 400 years old. Unlike Pepper and Ruby, Lacus didn't have the power of water or ice. However, Lacus had the power to control the mist, and she generally uses that power to confuse enemies and flee. Small explosions can be heard when Victor and Lacus engage in combat. "He always seems to be at full power and never gets tired, so we decided he should get tired first," Pepper recovered and spoke in a cute voice.
As Lady Lacus had nothing to do, we decided she should fight Victor. But while the two of them were fighting, we found that he learns faster by fighting than explaining. Kaguya finished explaining. In the beginning, he wasn't managing to keep up with Lacus, but slowly he started to get used to his body. Now he can give Lacus a decent fight. He's getting better really fast, Kaguya said. As expected from my darling, Violet spoke with pride. He reminds me a bit of my mother, Pepper commented with her finger on her cheek as she looked at Victor, who had a big smile on his face. How rude! He's not crazy and an old hag, Violet huffed. That was not what I meant, Pepper yelled, seeing that Violet ignored her, her cheeks starting to turn squirrel-like. Then she turned away. Huh. Boing, boing. Veins started popping in Violet and Kaguya's heads. This bitch, is she teasing me? Violet growled. Calm down, Lady Violet. We must not commit murder here. We must take her to a dark alley first, Kaguya suggested with a stoic expression. Oh, that's a good idea, Violet smiled dangerously. Pepper felt a shiver in her body, and since her instincts had always been good, she decided to slowly back away from Violet and Kaguya. Silently, she whispered as she walked away. But she didn't expect a big body to fly towards her. Kia! She screamed in fear as her body collided with Victor. Oh, I'm sorry, sister, Lacus said a little regretfully. Ouch! Victor puts his hand on his head. This power to become mist is annoying, he spoke annoyed, but the smile never left his face. Every time I go to hit her, her body turns into fog and she runs away. It's very slippery. I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but I don't know what it is. Feeling a heaviness on his chest, Victor looks down and sees Pepper's red face lying on his chest. It's decided. I'm going to kill this one, bitch. Pure fire started to come out of Violet's body. When Violet was going to run towards Pepper and Victor, she was suddenly immobilized by Kaguya. Let go of me, Kaguya. Violet began to struggle. Although the idea of killing Pepper is interesting, I can't let Lady Violet do that. What just happened was clearly an accident. Wah. I'm sorry. Pepper was about to say something, but suddenly Victor stood up while holding Pepper like a princess. Fouet? Pepper didn't know what to say, so she was silent as her face was completely red. He puts Pepper on the floor and pats Pepper's clothes to dust them off. Then, finishing knocking the dust off of Pepper's body, he squats down a little and puts his face level with Pepper's face. That is something he's needed to do a lot lately. Being 195 centimeters tall has its downsides. Then he says, smiling gently, "Don't be too inattentive when two people are fighting, okay?" He appeared to be talking to a small child. Pepper nodded. Good. Soon he gets up and looks at Lacus with eyes glowing red. His smile changed from a gentle smile to a distorted smile. Let's continue. Yeah, Lacus agreed. Electrified. Violet and Kaguya were speechless when they saw Victor's attitude. They expected him to react differently when Pepper fell on him with those two melons, but why did he treat Pepper like a child? For God's sake, she's over 100 years old. A few hours later, Victor was still fighting Lacus, and he didn't seem to be tired. Victor was still glowing with energy, and he felt like he could fight for as long as it took. He looked like a child who was very excited about his toy. He's getting better too fast. Actually, he's making fewer useless moves. How is this possible? He never fought from what I remember. Violet spoke as she placed her hand on her chin. She watched Victor for a long time, and she clearly remembers that he never practiced martial arts. Self-defense training with that wolf doesn't count as martial arts. After all, that's just self-defense. I don't understand this absurd progress. This is not as unusual as you think. Violet is startled by the sudden voice, and she looks up. Old witch, don't scare me like that. Scathach's face distorts for a few seconds. She suddenly moves at a speed Violet can't react to. Then she hits Violet's head with her fist. Ouch! Violet held her head. What are you doing, witch? Scathach hits Violet's head again. You never learn, huh? Do you have chicken brains? Respect your elders. See, you yourself said you were old. Violet stuck out her tongue. Scathach looked at Violet with a neutral expression. You're actually a lot like your mom when she was younger. She looks at Victor and continues, although your mom never had eyes for potential, you seem to be different. Of course, my darling has potential. He's my darling. Scathach looks at Violet's smug face with a blank expression. I take it back. You really are just like your mother. Huh? I'm different from her. She was about to say something, but suddenly she turned her face toward Scathach's mansion. Oh, Scathach flashed a curious smile when she saw Victor stop his training and look toward her mansion. Sasha! Victor and Violet spoke in unison. Huh? Why did you stop, Victor? Lakis asked curiously. Interesting. No matter how many times I see it, this is really something curious. Due to the magic in the ritual, their connection must have gotten stronger, and it seems that it wasn't only the connection that got stronger. Scathach's eyes seemed to glow blood red for a few seconds as she looked at Victor. Victor ignores Lakis, closes his eyes, and senses Sasha's messed up emotional state, and soon he sends his worried feelings towards her. Sasha, who just arrived at Scathach's mansion, looked towards the forest. Darling! Then, sensing the emotions that Victor sent, she displays a small, gentle smile. She closes her eyes and sends her thoughts, saying, It's all well. Another intruder! Today has been a strange day. So many visitors. Oh, it's Lady Sasha. Sienna suddenly appeared. Sasha's gentle smile fades from her face, and she assumes a neutral expression. Sienna, it has been a while since we have seen each other. Indeed. I know it's useless to ask this, but what are you doing here? I came to see my husband, Sasha said. As expected, she sighed. She flips her hair to her back and says, Do you want some advice? No, thank you. Sasha turned her face away and started walking towards the forest. Sienna just gaped when she saw Sasha rejecting her goodwill. She disappears and appears beside Sasha. What? I'm in a hurry. Sasha looked at Sienna. Listen to me. Young people these days are very rushed, she sighed. Then she continued, In vampire history, there has never been a man who was married to 3 heiresses from powerful families. She was going to start giving a sermon on Sasha. Yes, Sasha interrupted Sienna. If the younger vampires find out about it, they'll be jealous, and if the older vampires find out about it, they'll think the 3 most powerful families are lying. Blah, blah. Sienna looked at Sasha coldly. Are you treating me like a child? I know what I'm doing, and if a problem happens, my husband and I will fix it. So your advice is useless, and you keep losing time telling me this nonsense. And are you going to look for a man to put out your fire? Sienna's eyes flashed blood red. She was clearly annoyed. It looks like you're not having a good time. Something must have happened. Sasha huffed. Yeah, something happened. My family lost everything that was built for 2,000 years because of my whore mother, and the woman I consider my real mother died, murdered by church dogs. So yes, something happened, and I'm sorry if I didn't want to hear your bullshit. Sienna looked sympathetically toward Sasha, and that made Sasha angrier. Calm down. She's not to blame. You know that. She heard Victor's voice. Sasha bites her lip and clenches her fist tightly. Then she lets out a big sigh. She looks at Sienna with a regretful expression. I'm sorry, Sienna, but I'm not having a good time right now, okay? I just want to see my husband. I figured that out, and don't worry about what happened. I know what it's like to take anger out on someone who is innocent. Sienna was very understanding. Okay. Anyway, do you need something? Sasha asked. I'll talk to you later. Go see your husband, Sienna spoke, the last word with a bit of disgust.
Sasha's eyes changed to blood red as she saw the obvious contempt for Victor. But since she didn't want to conflict with Ruby's sister, she just turned her face away and started walking towards Victor. Seeing Sasha's reaction and remembering her own mother's reaction, Sienna's curiosity about Victor started to grow again, but also a feeling of disgust grew. How can they marry cattle? That's disgusting, she spoke as her body shuddered. Unlike Lacus and Pepper, Sienna learned of Victor's origin through conversations with Skothak herself. After all, as Skothak's eldest daughter, she always helped her mother in whatever she needed. Skothak was a strong vampire, but she didn't care much for democracy or dialogue. She wasn't like that in the past, but she started to get numb the longer she lived. Now she doesn't like to waste time on dialogue, and generally she just does what she wants. Because of that, Sienna's assistance was needed. Skothak needed someone to take responsibility for her territory and someone to clean up her mess whenever she needed it. And since Sienna has a lot of respect for her mother, she did this job with a smile on her face. Besides, it's not like this job was bad. She has all the power that someone with the Vampire Earl title can have, and that influence is something she liked. I need to get back to work, Sienna spoke aloud as she started walking towards a place. Hey, witch, what do you mean that this is not unusual? Violet said as she was looking at Victor, who was fighting Lacus. Ugh. Skothak looked at Violet with a tired expression. Is your brain really rotten? She sighed. Violet ignored it and continued. I know my darling is awesome. After all, he is my darling, she smiled proudly. But I also know that what he's doing isn't normal, I think. Skothak rolled her eyes, and then she looks at Victor. What he is doing now, fighting and learning while fighting, is not uncommon. Many warriors in the past have done this, and I can count on my finger the warriors who had this ability. Warriors like Ku Chulainn, Hercules, Arthur Pendragon, Lancelot, etc. Violet looked at Skothak in disbelief. You are really old. Skothak makes a fist and hits Violet on the head again. Ouch, my head! She holds her head in pain. Skothak looks at her fist. Now that I think about it, maybe I'm to blame for you being so stupid. Hitting you on the head since you were a little girl must have caused it. And there's your mother's genes in your blood, too. Stop hitting my head, Violet grumbled. The Countess Skothak seems to have a very high opinion of Lord Victor, Kaguya said curiously. Skothak ignored Violet and looked at Kaguya. The ritual changed him. He was turned into a vampire, but not an ordinary vampire. Because of his blood, he became something else. She looked at Victor with a distorted smile on her face. And at the same time, he received the potential of 3 bloodlines. Clan Snow, Clan Scarlet, and Clan Folger, Kaguya said. We can ignore Clan Snow and Clan Folger. After all, one is a stupid woman, and the other is a useless woman who likes to bet, and in the end, she always lost the bet, Skothak spoke in disdain. With just my bloodline alone, he could become very powerful, but as he has these extra bloodlines, he can become even stronger. And to improve his personality, he reminds me of me when I was younger. Her smile seemed to distort even more. I'm looking forward to the future. Seeing Skothak's distorted smile, Kaguya couldn't help thinking it was a bad idea to let Skothak find out about Victor. Huh? I agree that my mother is a useless bitch, but my father is in my clan too. Skothak looks at Violet with a disinterested expression. A man who has been exploited all his life? A man with the only quality of being handsome? A man who exists only to satisfy his mother's vanity? Boring. Violet wasn't offended by what Skathek said. She was used to the woman's dirty mouth, but she couldn't help asking, "You seem to know my father." "Of course I know that man. In the past, his mother asked me to save him from 2 strong women. What were their names again? I forget. They are not important anyway." Violet started to think about what she heard. She had suspicions that something like that happened to her father in the past. After all, he was very handsome, and that powerless beauty was just a curse. "The 2 women were strong, but I couldn't even enjoy myself for very long. Well, seeing your mother, who was a psycho bitch, bending over to me for my help was a satisfying thing to see." She smiled with some amusement. "I'd like to see that." Violet flashed a smile. Kaguya looked with an expressionless face at Violet, and she couldn't help but comment, "Is Lady Violet really Countess Agnes's daughter?" "Huh?" Violet looked at Kaguya. "Yes, I am, but my mom is a very narcissistic woman. I grew up hearing the same words about how she was beautiful, how she was hot. It was fucking annoying." Thinking back to the past, Kaguya nodded in agreement. "I feel bad for you," Skathek commented with a small smile on her face. It was obvious she was enjoying herself. "Humph," Violet snorted. "Victor, what is that?" Hearing Pepper's curious scream, the 3 women look towards Victor. Soon they see something that shocks them. Victor was covered in lightning. His right arm was covered in pure ice, and his left arm was covered in fire. It worked. I knew something was wrong. Thank you, Lacus," he said, smiling at Lacus. Lacus was confused. "But I didn't teach you anything. I just hit you." "I learned a lot by watching the way you use your fog powers," he explained. Lacus looked at Victor in shock. "Interesting." Skathak suddenly appeared beside Victor and looked him up and down as if sizing him up. "Did you manage to find your balance?" she spoke as her eyes glowed red. "Wrong." Victor shook his head. "My powers aren't balanced. I'm using 80% of the lightning all over my body and 10% of the fire and ice in my arms." "Oh," Skathak's smile grew a little. "While I was fighting Lacus, I discovered several things about my own power. Victor's body suddenly returns to normal, and soon his body starts to catch fire. Fire is a very easy power to control, but if I just use fire, I start to feel angry, and any little things that happen, I get easily irritated." "This is normal," Violet said as she walked to Victor's side. "What do you mean?" Lacus asked curiously. "The characteristic of my family's power is to amplify anger and any strong emotions the individual is feeling. For example, if I get jealous now, that jealousy of mine will be amplified by my power. Because of that, sometimes I lose control of my emotions." "Isn't that just an excuse for your twisted personality?" Pepper asked in a cute voice. Violet looked at Pepper with a neutral face. Sensing a bad feeling and fearing for her own safety, Pepper silently hid behind her mother. Victor flashed a small smile when he saw Violet's interaction with Pepper. The fire disappears from his body, and soon his body starts to get covered in ice. "Secondly, ice is very difficult to control, and if I use it too long, I start to feel a feeling of indifference. I become very listless." He spoke in a cold, indifferent voice. "Well, that's the hallmark of my power, though it doesn't affect me that much." Skathak spoke with a small smile on her face. Violet rolled her eyes. "Of course it doesn't affect you. You're a crazy bitch." Hearing someone approaching footsteps, the group looked at the individual. "Welcome back, Lady Sasha," Kaguya greeted Sasha. "I'm back." Sasha was going to say something, but her words caught in her throat when she saw Victor's body become covered in lightning. What? She wasn't believing what she was seeing. From her reaction, I think she doesn't know about Victor's powers. Does anyone mind letting her know about it? Lacus asked. "Pass," Kaguya said. "Boring," Skathak said. "Laziness," Violet said. "I'm tired," Lacus said. All the women looked at Pepper. "Foo?" Pepper looks at the women, then a pout appears on her face and she says, "Fine, I will do it."
Pepper approaches Sasha and starts explaining to her everything that happened. Thirdly, lightning is a very unique power. It greatly increases my speed, and because of that, I can't control it very well. But compared to the other two powers, lightning is more neutral. You're wrong, husband. Sasha suddenly stopped talking to Pepper and interrupted Victor. Victor looked at Sasha. My power was originally supposed to harm the vampire greatly, but thanks to my father's bloodline, this effect is negated, and the hallmark of my power is to amplify recklessness, she explained. Even though she didn't understand how Victor could use her lightning, she didn't want him to misunderstand her power. I thought he could only use Violet's power, she thought. Recklessness? Victor spoke. Yes, you're more likely to do reckless things when you use lightning too much, Sasha added. But soon she goes back to talking to Pepper. Oh, but I guess that doesn't apply to me, Victor spoke as he stopped using his power. That's because Darling is already so reckless. You get too lost when you're having fun, Violet smiled. Oh, well, that's true. Victor can't deny it. Lord Victor has been training for over 21 hours, and you probably didn't even feel the hours go by, right? Kaguya spoke. Well, my timing is impaired because of this endless night. Victor looked up at the full moon. I was having a lot of fun, too. He flashed a big smile. Looking at Victor's smile, Kaguya sighed. Sigh, I feel like I'm going to sigh a lot in my life. She had a feeling her words were correct. I see. Skathik placed a hand on her chin. You haven't found a perfect balance. You're just using the powers in a way that doesn't impair your ability to think while fighting. Victor looks at Skathik. I've lost control of my actions twice in the past. I don't intend to make that mistake a third time. That's a good mentality. She praised him with a small smile on her face. Thank you. He smiled a little. Darling! Violet climbed on Victor's back. Victor looked at Violet. You need to get some rest. She flashed a smile as her eyes glowed blood red. Understanding what she wanted, Victor agreed. You're right. Aren't you going to train anymore? Lacus asked with a pout. I will train later, he replied. Sorry, but that won't happen. Skathik flashed a distorted smile. Huh? Lacus looked at her mother in disbelief. I have a bad feeling about this, Kaguya whispered in a low voice. I could see what you were capable of doing today, and I know what kind of training is right for you. Her smile seemed to grow disproportionately. Rest for 3 days. You'll need it. Skathik turned, and soon everyone could just see the woman's silhouette. While running in the forest, Skathik said, how long has it been since I have trained someone with such potential? I think it's been 1,800 years? Well, it doesn't matter. She stopped thinking about it, but when she remembered she was going to train a man with so much potential, her body trembled in ecstasy. I'm excited! Then, without realizing it, her cheeks turned a little red, and her breathing became gasping. Her eyes glowed blood red, and she flashed a big smile that showed all her sharp teeth. This is going to be fun! Ha ha ha! She was having so much fun. Hearing Skathik's crazy laughter in the forest, Victor felt his body shiver. He was excited. Lacus and Pepper also felt their bodies shiver. But they weren't excited. They were scared. Well, I hope you don't get traumatized, Lacus said with a sympathetic expression. Sniff, sniff. Pepper starts to get watery eyes and she falls to the ground. I don't want my new friend to die. It's okay, sister. Lacus massaged Pepper's back. Victor won't die. I fought him, and I know he's strong. He'll just be a little traumatized, but that's normal. Sasha looked at Pepper and Lacus incredulously. Aren't you exaggerating? They are not exaggerating, Violet spoke, with a lifeless face. She seemed to be thinking about something. That crazy witch is very Spartan. Remember, she is over 2,000 years old. Her training is not ordinary for today. Violet still remembers the time when she came to visit Ruby after training. Her friend had dead eyes. and when she narrated her training, Violet felt her body shuddered. Unconsciously, she hugged Victor's back tighter. Sasha was worried. She looked at Victor, but she was surprised when she saw the big smile on Victor's face. "Why are you smiling?" Violet looked at Victor. "Huh? I don't know, but I just find it all so much fun. Indeed, this is so much fun. Ha ha ha!" He puts his hand on his face and starts to laugh. Sasha was speechless. Maybe, just maybe, I need to take my husband to the psychiatrist. She was taking it seriously. This kind of reaction is way beyond ordinary madness.
Some hours later, Violet, Sasha, and Victor separated from the group, and they started walking through the forest until they found a massive tree. Looking at the tree, they decided to sit under it. By the time Victor sits down on the ground, Violet can't hold back any longer. She climbs into Victor's lap and bites his neck. Feeling Violet sucking his blood, Victor began stroking her hair while keeping a gentle smile on his face. Sasha sat on Victor's right side. As usual, she's in a hurry. "Ha! If she wasn't like that, she wouldn't be my lovely Violet." He chuckled a little. Violet felt her body shudder as she heard Victor's words. Then, slowly, she stopped sucking his blood too hard and got more comfortable in his lap. Victor opens his mouth, and soon his teeth change. Wasting no time, he bites Violet's collarbone. "Ugh!" Violet moaned a little, but she didn't stop sucking Victor's blood. She looked very thirsty. Sasha looks at the moon and ignores the two for now. A part of her was jealous of Violet taking the initiative in front of her, but she was used to Violet's attitude. Because of that, she didn't try to think about it too much. A few minutes later, Violet stopped biting Victor and licked the blood from her lips. Her blood-red eyes slowly start to change to a violet color. Feeling satisfied with Violet's blood, Victor stops biting his wife's collarbone, and then he looks at Violet and smiles. Violet approaches Victor and starts licking his lips. "My blood tastes weird," she grumbled. "Really?" Victor was curious. "What does it taste like?" "Like normal blood?" Victor was speechless and flashed an amused smile. "I think vampires don't like to drink their own blood." Violet just closed her eyes and enjoyed Victor's caresses as she smiled. Victor leans his head against Violet's head. It's Sasha's turn. Violet's eyes began to darken, but Victor just displayed a gentle smile and kissed her mouth. Tongues began to fight over who was victorious. Eventually, Victor stopped kissing Violet. He caressed her face and said, "Don't think nonsense, you silly." Violet pouted cutely and slowly climbed out of Victor's lap, then sat on his left side. She holds his arm possessively and looks at Sasha while displaying a face that said, "Mine." Soon she rested her head on Victor's arm and closed her eyes. Sasha rolled her eyes when she saw Violet's attitude. Victor chuckled, and with his right hand he patted his thigh. Looking at his gesture, Sasha's face turns a little red, and slowly she crawls and sits on Victor's lap. "Now that I got to see you more closely, you've really gotten taller," Sasha commented in an attempt to avoid her embarrassment. "Indeed, my evolution gave me a lot of things." Victor laughed. He tugs at Sasha's waist with his right hand, and then he feels Sasha's body brush against his. He lightly caresses Sasha's thick thighs. She tried to say something. "Shh." Victor put his finger to her mouth with a silent gesture, then pulls Sasha's head to his chest and starts stroking her head. "Are you okay?" he asked in a gentle voice. Sasha's body shuddered at the sudden question, but soon she took a long breath and relaxed her body. She snuggled into Victor's chest and spoke in a slightly tired voice. "Now I am." Victor exhibited a small smile. "If you need to talk, I'm always here to listen." There was a moment of silence. Sasha flashed a gentle little smile on her face. "I know, and I appreciate that,
But right now, I just want to be like this." And then, slowly, she started to close her eyes. Victor just continued with a gentle smile on his face, and as he stroked Sasha's hair, he stares into the moonlight. "I didn't realize it, but," he thought for a moment, then spoke aloud, "what a beautiful night." Slowly, he closed his eyes. A calm and peaceful night. Victor's college, early afternoon. Tisk! Ruby was upset. She woke up wanting to punish a certain vampire, but when she went to the college, that vampire was gone. She looks around Cornelius's office and realizes that everything was untouched. It was like he was in such a hurry to get away. "He must have gone back to Nightingale," she spoke in a cold tone. She turns and walks towards the exit. "Well, he can't run away from me." She flashed a cold little smile. Director's office. "What do you mean you're dropping out of college? It's just the beginning of the year. You can't drop out of college now." A blonde-haired man with a big fat belly spoke. "Headmaster, I need to get back to my country. More important things than my college are going on." Ruby spoke in a neutral tone while crossing her legs elegantly. The director sighed and sat down in his chair. "An emergency?" He puts a hand on his brow. "Indeed." She nodded. "You know where I live, right? My mother is already a very old woman, and I need to go back to take care of her." "Well, it's an emergency." The principal sighed again. "It's a shame he's going to lose one of the most talented students in the college, but the student had a life of her own. He couldn't force anything on her." "All right, I will provide the papers as soon as possible." "Thank you, Director." Ruby exhibited a cold little smile. Then, slowly, her eyes changed to red, and she continues, "Can you do the same procedure for the student named Victor Walker?" "Huh?" The headmaster didn't understand, but when he looked into Ruby's eyes, it was as if all his worries disappeared. "Unfortunately, something urgent happened, and he needs to get out of the college." "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes, it will be done." The director spoke in a robotic voice as his eyes glowed blood red. "Good." Ruby smiled as she remembered something. "You don't need to notify the parents of the mentioned student." "Yes, I will not notify the parents of the student mentioned," he repeated in the same monotone. Ruby got up from the couch and walked towards the exit. When the door closed, Ruby walked away from the headmaster's office. The director woke up from his hypnotic state. "Huh? What was I doing?" He thought for a few seconds, but he couldn't remember. He just had the feeling that someone was in this office a few seconds ago. Without him noticing, his eyes turned red for a few seconds, then disappeared, and as if by magic, all his worries disappeared. "I must go back to work. I have to provide papers for the 2 students who are leaving from college." I think with that I got rid of the loose ends left by my darling and by Violet. I think I will go home now." Ruby, who was walking the halls of the college alone, spoke to herself. "Lady Ruby, you need to go to Lady Violet's mansion. 2 hunters were abandoned in that place." Ruby suddenly heard Luna's voice. "Luna, you're back." She looked back and saw her personal maid. "Yes, I needed to do something for your mother." "Oh, and what did you do for my mother?" "I built a coliseum." She spoke in a proud tone as she patted her chest. "You built it?" Ruby's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "I asked the witches to build it, but everything was supervised by me." She was probably sitting while watching the witches at work, Ruby thought. Ruby sighed at Luna's attitude and thought of the Colosseum. "My mom is thinking about training my darling. I hope he doesn't get traumatized." Ruby looks coldly at Luna. "I haven't forgotten what you did. You will be punished." "Huh?" "But I was thinking of what's best for Lady Ruby." "No excuses." I'm going to cut your salary by 90%. Ruby gave her ultimatum. As expected from Ruby, a kind woman, her punishment was very light. If it was with other vampires, the employee would have already died from this betrayal. But for Luna, this kind of punishment was just too scary. Luna's face darkened. Impossible! How am I going to buy my clothes on this small salary? Ruby looked at her maid in disbelief. Even if I reduced your salary by 90%, you're still going to earn $30,000. Isn't that enough? It is not. I spend $30,000 in one night. Ruby, your sense of money is totally broken. Huh? Luna didn't understand. Never mind. Ruby turned her face away and started walking. Did you bring the car? Yes. Luna smiled. Good. I was tired of walking around in this black coat. Lady Ruby must look like a suspicious person on the street. Luna spoke in a teasing tone. Ruby looked at Luna again. Don't test your luck or I'll cut your salary again. Please don't. I'll be quiet.
Arriving at Violet's mansion, Ruby's car pulled into the garage. Luna got out of the car, opened the door for Ruby, and, just as Ruby got out of the car, Luna stood in front of Ruby protectively. Lady Ruby Scarlet, a vampire who was Violet's servant, spoke in a neutral, respectful tone. "Luna, what are you doing?" Ruby asked. "Sorry, I acted unconsciously." Luna smiled apologetically. Ruby looked at Luna and thought, maybe she's thinking about that incident still. A maid who failed to protect her master must have affected Luna's mind in some way. Deciding that she must solve this problem in the future, Ruby looks at the man. "Where are the prisoners?" "Follow me," the man spoke as he started walking. Ruby followed the man as she was accompanied by Luna, who walked behind her in silence and eyed the man cautiously. The two women followed the man into a dark basement that was lit only by torches. "The prisoners are in this room," the man spoke as he pointed to a door, and then he disappeared. "He's still around," Luna warned in a low voice. "I know," Ruby said. Ruby wasn't too worried. These vampires were Violet's servants, and they didn't have the balls to do her any harm. Unlike some hunters who underestimate Scottish's strength and madness, vampires knew all too well how crazy that woman could be. And Ruby wasn't weak either. She was trained by her mother, and there's a massive difference between a hunter with the rank of a general and those vampires who are only good for cannon fodder. Ruby walks through the door, and the first thing she sees is Jimmy and Thomas, two budding hunters who were captured by Violet and Victor. They were playing cards in a very relaxed way. She looks around and realizes that there is a lot of food lying around. They are feeding the pigs, she thought. "Mr. Vampire, did you bring more food? Thank you so much. You can let—" Jimmy spoke, but he stopped talking as he looked toward the door. "Huh? Who are you?" Thomas asked as he turned away. "Idiot!" Jimmy hit Thomas on the head. "Ouch! Stop hitting my head, dickhead!" Thomas yelled angrily. Jimmy ignores Thomas and says, "Lady Ruby Scarlet, daughter of the most powerful female vampire in the world, Countess Scattish Scarlet, what do I owe your visit to this humble place?" Double exclamation point. Hearing what Jimmy said, Thomas opened his eyes in shock, and then he eyed Ruby warily. Ruby puts her hand to her chin, like she's thinking about what to do. For her, these hunters weren't even worth her time. She's just here in front of these hunters because she wants to sort out the loose ends that her husband and her friend left in this town. She could clearly see that they were novice hunters. They wouldn't give her a lot of useful information. Seeing Ruby in silence and looking at them coldly, Jimmy and Thomas broke out in a cold sweat. Somehow they could deduce they were in danger. Ruby kept thinking until an idea popped into her head. She flashed a cold little smile. Seeing the cold smile on Ruby's face, the two budding hunters knew they were fucked. "Luna, bring me the magic contracts,"
Violet must have some in her personal room. But you're going to be alone. She wanted to protest, but she stopped talking when she saw Ruby's cold eyes. Do as I say. Yes, Lady Ruby. Luna bows in respect, then she turns and walks towards the exit. Seeing Luna leaving the room, Ruby sighed inwardly. She changed her mind when she saw Luna's reaction. She thought to herself that she should solve this little problem as soon as possible. She didn't want an incompetent maid. Ruby faithfully follows the teachings of her mother and remembers what Scottish once said in the past. Ruby, if you ever make a mistake, don't take it to heart. Try to learn from the mistake, and more importantly, try not to make that mistake in the future. Ruby agreed with her mother's thoughts. Repeating the same mistakes over and over was just insanity. Ruby stops thinking about it. Then she looks at the hunters with her cold, indifferent eyes. First, clean up this mess. Are you pigs? Yes, ma'am, Jimmy responded vigorously, and soon he got up and pulled Thomas. Help me, you idiot! Thomas was going to say something, but when he saw Jimmy's eyes like he was telling him not to say anything, he closed his mouth. Soon the two hunters began to organize the room. Not wanting to sit in a spot these two men had already sat in, Ruby creates an ice throne and sits on it, crosses her legs and waits patiently for her maid to return. A few minutes later, Luna returned with 3 golden papers in her hand. These were magical contracts made by the witches. She handed the papers to Ruby and waited patiently beside her. Ruby took the papers. 3, huh? I didn't find any more magic contracts. I think Lady Violet only had these. Unexpected. I thought she would have more. After all, she has frequent contact with that witch, Ruby commented. Then she continued, well, 3 is enough. She stands up, bites her finger, and a drop of blood falls on a paper. The paper starts to glow slightly, and then Ruby starts speaking in Latin. Primo clausula proditione e mortem. Translation, first clause, betrayal and death. When Ruby spoke these words, the gold paper began to float and letters began to be written on the paper. Listening to what Ruby said, Jimmy, who had already tidied up the whole room along with Thomas, said, Fuck, we're fucked. His face darkened. Huh? Why are we fucked? Silence. Jimmy looked at Thomas with a tired face. Sometimes I'm envious of your simplicity, he sighed. Question mark? Thomas didn't understand. Jimmy wasn't in the mood to explain, and he just looked at Ruby with a tired face. He seemed to have given up on trying to resist. He was already in the vampire's lair. What could 2 mere budding hunters do? Ruby flashed a cold little smile. Secundi clausula, magister et secreto. Translation, second clause, master and confidentiality. Great, just great. Jimmy already understood where this was going. Sometimes being a smart guy is a curse. Tertium clausula, exploratorem. Translation, third clause, spy. The gold paper has stopped glowing gold. Ruby raises her hand and takes the paper. Then she looks at Thomas. The contract is simple. Be my spy. If you betray me, you die. If you leak information about this conversation, you die. If they find out you're under a magical contract, you die. This is basically a slave contract. Jimmy wanted to scream. Do we have choices? He asked. Ruby looks at her feeling finger. No, you don't. Sigh. Jimmy sighed. He looked very depressed now. Thomas looked at Jimmy curiously and asked, Hey, Jimmy, why are you so depressed? Something happened? This motherfucker! For a moment, Jimmy almost exploded with rage, but he swallowed that rage and tried to control his emotions. Just be quiet, okay? Don't make our situation worse, he spoke in a low voice as he bit his lip. Yes, Thomas nodded. Jimmy knows it was Thomas's fault that they were in this situation. He warned him several times to come back and stay close to the more experienced hunters, but he was obsessed with looking for the vampires alone, and in the end they both got stuck in this situation. But despite knowing that, he couldn't lose control of his emotions right now. He needed to think about how to get out of this situation. The witch's contract can only be canceled by another witch. We can cooperate with that vampire now, and the first opportunity we meet a witch in the future, we ask her to void that contract. But canceling the contract requires an exorbitant amount of money. Fuck! Damned mercenary witches. "Have you finished thinking?" Ruby asked in a disinterested voice. "Can we try to negotiate the terms of the contract?" he asked, a little unsure. Ruby looked at Jimmy. Jimmy felt his body tremble with fear when he saw Ruby's cold gaze. "You seem to be getting something wrong." She spoke in words that made both Jimmy and Thomas's spines go cold. "You two are of no use to me, or to my husband. I just didn't let the vampires of this house feast on your guts, only for the reason I believe anyone can be helpful with a little encouragement. Death is a good incentive, right?" She exhibited a small smile. The two hunters were silent, and they didn't dare say anything now. "Then, what are you going to do?" she asked, and added, "Death or become a spy?" Luna looked at the slight smile on Ruby's face and couldn't help thinking that Ruby was having fun with this situation. She was very similar to her mother. They both have the same cruelty and sadism. The only difference is Lady Ruby is not as crazy as her mother. After winning over two spies who have questionable competence, Ruby warned the vampires that they were Violet's servants to protect Victor's mother and father. She assured them that if anything happened to Victor's parents, they wouldn't have a peaceful death. Soon after that, she returned to the basement of Victor's house. "Natalia, is everything ready?" she asked, entering the room. Natalia, who was standing in front of a door, said, "Yes, everything is ready, Lady Ruby." "Oh, you're back." She looked at Luna. "Yes, I'm back." Luna smiled at Natalia. She looks at the maid who was next to Natalia. "Oh, so it's you." By looking at the woman's characteristics, she can instantly deduce who the woman was. Yes, the hunter who killed the vampires, the great villain of the story. Maria spoke in a sarcastic tone. Ruby narrows her eyes a little when she hears Maria's words. She looks at the maid, focusing her attention on Maria's lifeless eyes, and notices something. She gave up on resisting, huh? "A piece of advice. I suggest you don't say that in front of Sasha," Ruby warned. "Yes, I know," she nodded. "I gave up fighting, but I don't want to die being tortured." She sighed at the end. Ruby was speechless. What happened in the time she was gone? She looks at Natalia. What happened to her? "Well, I had a little talk with her. I wanted to put her to work after all. She was basically a parasite that lay around in a catatonic state. And I unintentionally said that she or that hunter from the church would die anyway." "You didn't lie. It's better to tell the truth than to feed a lie and raise false hopes." Natalia nodded in agreement. Luna approached Maria and poked Maria's face with her finger. "What are you doing?" Maria asked. "I'm just curious. What are you?" Luna asked. "Huh?" Maria didn't understand what she meant. "I'm a leech, right? Why are you asking the obvious?" You don't look like a vampire to me." She spoke as she looked Maria up and down, as if assessing. "You look like a dead human to me." "Aren't vampires dead?" "It's not that. You look something like a vampire, but defective," Luna said. "At least that's how I feel looking at you." Maria opens her eyes a little, and soon she remembers Sasha's words saying she was going to be a defective vampire. "According to the words of my—" She bit her lip. She didn't want to say the word, but in the end she had no choice. "Master. I'm a defective vampire." Sasha did the ritual without the necessary materials. Ruby's face showed a slight annoyance. What was that woman thinking? She wasn't thinking about anything. She just wanted revenge, Natalia said. Ruby agreed with Natalia's reasoning. I hope this doesn't get out of hand, or I'll have to kill this woman. The race she has become is a hard curse to be exterminated if left unchecked, Ruby thought. Feeling a bad feeling about this, Maria asked Ruby, "What do you mean? What have I become?" Luna looked at her master curiously. Ruby silenced. "You became a ghoul," Natalia spoke for Ruby. Ghoul? Maria tries to remember the church records. Ghoul, a vampire subspecies, the failed result of a vampire. They were often used in warfare as soldiers. Did I become that? Yes, Ruby continued. Maria didn't know what to say. She didn't really understand the ghouls. But from the reaction of the vampires around her, she somehow feels she was in a much worse situation than she imagined. Ghoul, a subspecies of vampires, the failed result of a vampire. They were often used in warfare as soldiers. According to my mother, vampires at the time used ghouls as a biological weapon. After all, you only need one bite or scratch from this creature, and you become one of them. So vampires usually threw a ghoul into town and expected that in less than 2 days, the ghouls would destroy the entire city if they weren't exterminated. Isn't that like the zombies in the movies? Luna asked. It's similar, at least in the way they propagate fast, Natalia said. She looks at Maria and explains. Seeing that you are still conscious, you must have become a ghoul king, a kind of leader who was able to control them. Great, just great, she sighed at the end. Sasha is really vindictive. She chose the worst punishment a woman can have. Huh? Maria looked at Ruby. It won't happen now because you've just died, but eventually your skin will start to rot. You'll eventually start to forget about things, and slowly you'll lose your true self. In the end, you'll just become a beast whose only pleasure is killing and multiplying like a virus. Maria's face darkened. She bit her lip and clenched her fist tightly. Her body was visibly shaking. She lowered her head and small tears started to fall from her face. This is very cruel. She spoke in a low voice. But since everyone in the room had supernatural ears, everyone could hear her. This is the consequence of your actions and also the result of your weakness, Ruby spoke coldly. Indeed, if she was strong enough to kill Sasha, this wouldn't have happened. Maria said nothing. Ruby turns her face away and starts walking towards the door. But if she killed Sasha, her fate would be worse than becoming something like a ghoul. Trust me, there are far worse fates than the one you are suffering now. When Ruby grabs the doorknob, she turns her face and looks at Maria, who made a sudden movement. Maria ran towards the kitchen that was near the bedroom, took a knife and tried to pierce her head. She was trying to kill herself. It's useless, Ruby said, as she looked at the knife that was inches from piercing Maria's eye. The master's orders are absolute. If Sasha doesn't allow it, you can't kill yourself. Fuck! Maria throws the knife to the ground. Luna and Natalia just looked at everything with cold, disinterested eyes. They didn't care a bit about Maria. Is the pointless joke over? Let's go back now. I need to see my darling. Ruby flashed a small, affectionate smile.
Passing through the portal, Ruby finds herself in her personal room. My room. She looks around and realizes that nothing has changed since she left the house. Oh? Hearing a surprised voice, Ruby looks towards the voice and sees her mother. Mother! Daughter, you've finally come back. I was wondering if I would have to kidnap you too. Scathach exhibited a loving little smile. Hearing what her mother said, Ruby sighed. Where are my sisters? Sienna is at work, Pepper is sleeping, and Lacus is sleeping too. Sienna and Lacus I understand, but why is Pepper sleeping too? I do not know. Maybe she got tired from training Victor.
Scathach spoke like it didn't matter much. Then she looked at Luna, and her eyes lit up. "Is everything ready?" she asked with a small smile on her face. "Yes, whatever Countess Scathach asked me to do, I'm done," Luna spoke in a respectful tone. "Good, good." Scathach can't help but smile a little more. She can't wait for 3 days to pass soon. Ruby sighed inwardly when she saw her mother's interest in Victor. Darling will be left with eternal scars after this training. "Luna, this is my house. I want you to treat them like my guests," Ruby said while pointing to Natalia and Maria. Even the ghoul?" Luna asked to be sure. "Don't call her that. She has a name. And yes, even her," Ruby spoke. "As expected from Lady Ruby, you are very kind." Ruby looked at Luna. "Wrong. I'm not nice. That's just basic etiquette." "Yes, I know." Luna smiled, with a smile that said, "I understand everything." "No, you don't understand." Ruby rolled her eyes and explained, "Maria is Sasha's problem. It's my friend who should solve this problem. I'll only get involved if she asks for help. And since she didn't, that's not my problem yet." "Yes, as expected from Lady Ruby, you have a kind heart." Luna flashed a smug smile. Ruby looked at Luna with a tired expression. "Forget it." Ruby gave up. "Come, daughter, let's talk." Seeing that the conversation ended, Scathach spoke to Ruby. Then she started walking towards the exit of the room. "Okay." Ruby nodded and started to follow her mother. She looked at Luna for a moment with a face that said, "Do your job." Luna looked at Natalia and Maria. "Come on, I'll accompany you two to your personal rooms." "Pass." Natalia held up her hand, saying. Luna looked at Natalia curiously. Natalia explained, "I went back to Nightingale. My work as a maid is temporarily stopped until my master Violet leaves this town, so I'm on vacation." "Envy," Luna commented. She wanted a vacation too, but due to the mistake she made the past few days, she thinks it's going to be difficult for her to get a vacation. Natalia flashed a small smile when she heard what Luna said. She walked towards Ruby's wardrobe, then snapped her fingers. She opens Ruby's wardrobe and sees that the interior of the wardrobe has changed to a portal. She looks at Luna and says, "I'm going to go back to my clan and enjoy my vacation days. See ya." Soon she goes through the portal, and the moment she goes through the portal is closed. Now that I've stopped to think about it, isn't she a human? What is a human doing in the vampire world? That is not so uncommon. Humans can always come to this world at the invitation of noble families. Normally, humans of high status in society are the guests, and that woman's family is just very special. They are direct servants of the king of vampires himself. "Oh, how do you know that?" "I've heard Master talking in the past," Maria replied. "Oh." Soon her face darkened a little. "You're not supposed to know that woman is part of the clan who is the direct servant of the king." Is this supposed to be a secret?" Maria asked. "I do not know," she spoke doubtfully. "I think so, but seeing Maria's ability, everyone in the vampire world will associate her with that clan servant. Only ordinary humans shouldn't know anything. So I think it's okay. I'm not a human anymore. I've become that." She said the last part in disgust. Makes sense," Luna said, and soon she dropped the subject. She started walking towards the exit. "Come on, I'll show you to your room." "Okay." On the porch of Scathach's mansion, 2 women were enjoying the tranquil mood of Nightingale's endless night. If strangers looked at them, they would think the women were sisters because of their identical appearance, but they could barely imagine that they were actually mother and daughter. "Mother, be honest with me," Ruby spoke in a neutral voice. Scathach looked at her daughter. "Why are you interested in my darling?" She looked into her mother's eyes for answers. Ruby knew that her mother was interested in people with great powers. An example of this is Sienna, her eldest adoptive sister. In the past, Sienna showed great potential, and because of that, her mother adopted her. Victor's potential is obvious. This is undeniable. Ruby still remembers the day that Victor assumed the form of Count Vampire, with only the awakening of powers. This kind of potential only appeared in the children of the King Vampire and Count Vampires. But if it were a small interest, Ruby would understand, but her interest in Victor is very abnormal. She went so far as to build an entire coliseum just for Victor. Building a coliseum was not cheap, and especially hiring witches for the service. Silence. Scathoc's neutral face suddenly changed into a big smile. "Ah, my sweet and beloved daughter, my precious little Ruby. You really have no idea what you've got yourself into, huh?" "What?" Ruby didn't expect this response from her mother. Scathach gets up from the chair that she was sitting in, and slowly she walks to the front of the chair where Ruby was sitting. She kneels in front of her daughter and lightly touches her daughter's face. "Look at you, so young, so innocent, so pure, like a little red flower that's just growing. I always had concerns that someone might try to deceive you." She started to caress her daughter's face. "Mother?" Ruby didn't understand her mother's sudden reaction. "Because of that, I was always overprotective of you. Who knew I could feel like this soon? In the past, I hated that feeling, but it's not so bad." Silence. Ruby looked at her mother's expression without understanding anything. In moments like this, when she was frustrated with herself, she always said that she understood her mother. But in the end, she couldn't understand anything about her mother. "Mother, are you running away from the question?" Ruby asked. Silence. Scathach exhibited a gentle smile. She looked at her daughter and stroked her face again. "Who knows? Maybe I am. You know, right? I'm an old person, and I get emotional easily." Silence. Ruby looks at her mother's expression with neutral eyes. Again, she always evades questions. She's like a slippery eel. She never gave me a satisfactory answer. How can I try to understand her if she doesn't say anything? I'm not psychic. This is frustrating. Since she was a little girl, she has always felt like this. Just when she thought that she understood her mother, something happened that made her realize that she really didn't understand anything about her mother. For a child who wanted to be closer to her mother, it was frustrating. That was annoying. And most importantly, that was lonely. Scathach flashes a loving smile and tugs on both of Ruby's cheeks. "Foi? Stop." Scathach lets go of her daughter's chubby cheeks. "My little Ruby, don't try to understand me. You'll end up going crazy just like me." She strokes her daughter's head. Ruby looks at her mother and she thinks, "Oh, I already know this pattern." She's going to say something like, "A being who has lived for 2,000 years on this earth always has screws loose in their head. A being who has lived for 2,000 years on this earth always has screws loose in their head." Ruby repeated her mother's words in unison. Silence. Scathach exhibited a surprised face. Ruby flashes a slight smile. "It's the same pattern. When you don't want to say something to me, you keep throwing these confusing phrases in an attempt to distract me." Silence. Scathach's smile began to grow. Pfft. Then, unable to take it, she started to laugh. And that laugh only made Ruby's brain stop working again. Scathach laughed as if finding something very funny. After a few minutes of laughing, she looks at her daughter with a gentle smile. "Ah, since Victor appeared, I seem to be laughing more." Ill. Ruby looked at her mother with a wary look. "Mother? Seeing her daughter's gaze, she understood something. "Oh yeah, are you thinking indecent things? You are already that age. What a perverted daughter I have." Ruby's face turned pure red. She never imagined her mother would tease her. "You are so cute. Scathach pulls her daughter's head to her chest, and soon she starts stroking her daughter's head. It's different from darling, she thought when she felt her mother caress her head. Silence. Ruby sighed wearily and nuzzled her head into her mother's breast. It's frustrating. I'm your daughter, but I can never fully understand you. For a moment, Scathach stopped stroking Ruby's head. Silly. It is impossible for someone to completely understand another being. Mostly understand someone like me. Scathach chuckled a little, and then she started stroking her daughter's head again. Ruby looks up and looks at her mother. Is there anyone who can understand you? For a moment, the face of a man smiling just like her own appeared in Scathach's mind, but she shook her head inwardly, saying it was impossible for that to happen. Who knows? Maybe there were someone like that. If there were, I would like to meet that person. Sometimes even I don't understand myself completely. I just do what I want. Ha ha.
Ruby sighed again. She snuggles her head in her mother's breast and says without looking at her mother, One day I'll understand you completely. She made a promise to herself. Scathach didn't say anything. She just kept stroking her daughter's head. Then, slowly, she turns her face to the moon and thinks, my beloved daughter, I really wish that day will never come. After Ruby's conversation with her mother, the redhead decided it was time to visit her darling. Ruby was walking through the forest with an annoyed face. It was only when she left her mother's presence that she understood something. Ruby sighed again. She tricked me. She stomped the ground in frustration. She wanted to ask about her mother's interest in Victor, but at some point the conversation turned into a mother-daughter conversation, and she avoided the subject entirely. She's always like that. She steps on the ground again, and when she hit the ground froze completely. She ignored the frozen ground and yelled in frustration as she ruffled her hair. Ah! She always uses that lip service and deceives me. Damn it! I should have known this, but why do I always fall for this trick? With frustration building inside her body, Ruby looks at a poor tree with her eyes glowing red. Fuck! She closes her fist and attacks the tree. Boom! The poor tree flew towards an unknown place. Now that she was letting off steam, various feelings she had been holding in her heart started to come out. She remembers an arrogant blonde vampire. And that fucking arrogant son of a bitch, he always caused me trouble, and I had no excuse to kill him. But the first plausible excuse I find, he runs away. Damn it. She started attacking the surrounding landscape in frustration. Stones, trees, sand, plants, everything wasn't safe from Ruby. Violet, this spoiled bitch, always causing me trouble. Doesn't she know how hard it is to clean up her mess, especially in that incident where she blew up a damn building in the middle of New York? She created ice out of nowhere and attacked a rock. I mean, I know she was angry at being harassed. I was angry too, but she didn't need to blow up the entire building. She could have just killed the man. This would avoid drawing the attention of humans, and it would also avoid problems with the Royal Guard. If it weren't for the fear that the Royal Guard has for my mother, we would be in much bigger trouble. Ah! She ruffled her hair again. She sighs a little relieved, but soon the frustration rises in her heart when she remembers something. Sasha isn't out of the loop either. Though she isn't as troubled as Violet, can't she be any less reckless? She was almost killed by hunters, and instead of looking for help, she isolates herself and doesn't accept anyone's help. Irritating. Doesn't she know how worried I was? Fuck, 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 fuck! She kicks the ground several times, and every time she kicks the ground, little ice explosions occur, so the whole area around Ruby feels like a pretty epic battle has taken place. And Darling is very insensitive because he hasn't come to find me yet. Doesn't he know how much I miss him? And why am I having such strong feelings for someone I just met?
Ah! She ruffled her hair again. After screaming in frustration, she puts her finger to her lips and thinks, "It's his blood, right? It's his blood that made me interested in him, right?" She tried to convince herself that it was this. But what is this feeling of obsession? I feel like I want him just for me, and I get annoyed when Sasha and Violet are around. I want to kidnap him and lock him up in a basement. I want him just for me. Ah, what are these feelings? She was very confused. She lays on the ground and looks at the moon for a long time. Ah, she sighs. Then she says, "It's all Violet's fault. Yes, it's all Violet's fault. She always loses sight of what's important when she's angry, and I have to clean up her mess later. If it..." She was going to say more, but stopped when she heard something. "Whistle!" She heard someone whistle. "Who's there?" She stood up and looked at the visitor in a fighting stance. As the moonlight illuminates the visitor, Ruby's face darkened. "Darling?" "Yo!" Victor smiled gently as he looked at Ruby's disheveled appearance. "Look how dirty your beautiful red hair is," Victor spoke in a gentle tone as he arranged Ruby's appearance with his hands. "When did you arrive?" Ruby didn't move. She was paralyzed. "From the part you said, 'She tricked me.'" Victor displayed a sneaky smile. Ruby's face changed expressions several times. Victor watched with curiosity as Ruby's face changed to a shocked expression, then an embarrassed expression, then an angry expression, and finally a resigned sigh. "If you were there, you could have called me." She had a very dejected expression. Finishing fixing Ruby's messy hair, Victor spoke with a big smile on his face. "Hell no." "Huh?" Ruby didn't expect that answer. "I didn't want to miss this show," Victor spoke as he pointed to the landscape around him, "a rare moment of my wife who is usually cold and aloof, venting her emotions. I will never miss this opportunity. Look, I even recorded it to see in the future." He takes out his cell phone and shows Ruby the video. Ruby's face immediately turned crimson red when she heard Victor's words, and her face turned completely red when she saw the video Victor recorded. "Delete, now!" Ruby yelled. "Huh?" Victor showed his face in horror. It was as if Ruby had asked him to do something inhumane. "I wouldn't commit such blasphemy. I need this video to show my children in the future how cute their mother is." "Child? This..." She was trying to say something, but because of Victor's words that caught her off guard, she wasn't managing to form a coherent train of thought. Victor felt his heart being hit by an arrow when he saw Ruby's face. "Ah, my wife is so cute." Victor suddenly hugged Ruby. Ruby's face got redder when she heard Victor speak. Instinctively, when Victor hugged her, she started to struggle. She didn't even know what she was doing. She just wanted to get out of here and hide in a hole. She was so embarrassed. "Let go of me." "Never." Victor spoke with a conviction that shook Ruby completely. Ruby stopped struggling and looked at Victor. Seeing Ruby's cute face looking at him, he unconsciously displayed a gentle smile and kissed her. Not expecting the surprise attack, Ruby was completely melted in Victor's arms. She couldn't gather the strength to do anything else. Why am I fighting? He's my darling. I'm just supposed to accept everything," she thought with her mind a little shaken. Then she wrapped her arms around Victor's neck and kissed him back. A few minutes passed and Victor stopped kissing Ruby. When he stopped kissing Ruby, a bridge of saliva connecting the couple's mouth. He looks at Ruby's red eyes and Ruby's erratic breathing. He understood what she wanted, displays a gentle smile, and shows his neck. "Eat." Ruby wasted no time. Her teeth changed into sharp fangs, and soon she bit Victor's neck. "Ugh!" Victor held back the moan as he felt Ruby's fangs pierce his neck, and if that wasn't enough, he felt two mountains that were quite soft against his chest. He holds Ruby by her ass, and when he felt Ruby's entire body, he thought, "This body is just very unfair. It feels like I'm hugging a very seductive succubus. I feel like I'm going to lose myself in lust if I don't control myself." Having sucked the blood from Sasha and Violet, the only one left was Ruby to quench Victor's thirst completely. Soon, a primordial desire began to rise in Victor's body. His eyes changed to blood red and sharp fangs replaced his teeth. He pushed Ruby's shirt back a little and bit on his wife's collarbone. "Ah!" Ruby moaned very loudly. For some reason, her legs were feeling very weak now. She also felt a clear liquid that was leaking from her secret place. This liquid was making a mess with her pants. Victor didn't understand why she reacted so strongly, but he didn't have time to think about it when the taste of blood touched his tongue. Unconsciously, he tightened his grip on Ruby's thick ass. Ruby wraps her legs around Victor's waist. When she does this, she feels something thick touching her intimate place. "Darling!" She looks up at the sky with unfocused eyes. She seems to be very ecstatic. She licks the blood that was running from her lips. This blood is very tasty. Ruby's eyes begin to glow blood red. "Darling!" Again, she bit Victor's neck. A few minutes later, when the couple was completely satisfied. "Look what a mess we made," Victor chuckled when he saw the messed up state of his and Ruby's clothes. Ruby looked at a specific region of Victor's body. "He reacted to me." For some reason, she was very happy. Seeing where his wife was looking, Victor flashed a sly smile. "Are you curious? Do you want to see?" He held his pants like he was going to take them off at any time. "No, I do not want to." Ruby turned her face to the side. Victor appeared beside her. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Despite saying this, unconsciously she looked again at the hard member. Victor added information. "When I evolved, I noticed that all the muscles in my body grew and became denser and stronger, and as that limb is a muscle," he didn't need to continue. After all, Ruby was an intelligent woman. Swallows. She swallowed hard, and indecent thoughts began to form inside her head. Just imagining her being ravaged by Victor, a sense of anticipation began to grow in her heart. Victor's smile grew. He approached Ruby and lightly pulled the tip of Ruby's nipples that were hard as stones. "Ew." Ruby's face reddened when she pulled away from Victor quickly as she covered her breasts. "What are you doing?" "Teasing my wife." "Ew." Ruby's face turned completely red. Then she turned her face away again as she pouted. Victor appeared beside her again. "I can't help it. My wife, who is usually cold and distant, is showing so many reactions. Somehow I feel like my sadistic side is waking up." He blows in Ruby's ears.
Ruby walks away again. "Stop!" Despite saying this, her face was completely red and panting. "Okay, I'll stop." Victor backed away and spoke, still smiling. Ruby didn't expect this answer. Somehow she got. He appeared again beside her. "Are you just disappointed now?" She showed a face that said, "How did you know?" "I have a very perverted wife, huh? How lucky." Ruby's face starts to turn completely red, and soon a small explosion happens in her head. "Idiot!" she screamed. When Ruby tried to run away from this situation, "You can't run away." Victor holds her like a princess and starts walking towards the place where Sasha and Violet are sleeping. "Let me go!" She started to struggle as she screamed. Victor squeezes Ruby's ass a little hard. "If you don't stop, I'll continue what I was doing before." Ruby looked at Victor with a blank expression. "Let me go!" She screamed louder and began to struggle. Victor looked at Ruby with an incredulous expression, but slowly his smile started to grow. He kissed Ruby's mouth. "Hemp!" Ruby was taken by surprise, but soon she returns Victor's kiss. A few seconds later, when Victor stopped kissing Ruby, "I never thought my wife was a masochist," he chuckled. Ruby's face turned completely red, and she turned her face away in an attempt to hide her embarrassment. She completely gave up on running away now. Masochist? Me? How absurd, she thought. Victor displayed a gentle smile and then started walking again. As he walked through the forest carrying Ruby like a princess, Victor's eyes glowed blood red for a few seconds, and he stared at a distant spot in the forest. Seeing two individuals up in a tree, Victor exhibited a smile that wasn't a satisfied smile. After all, he wasn't an exhibitionist, and he didn't want anyone to see that side of his wife, even if these individuals were Ruby's sisters. By the way, after a few seconds when Victor decided to have some fun with Ruby, he stopped and asked Ruby if something was wrong, and also apologized for being rough. This was what a wifey I know. Ruby then punched Victor in the face and said she was never playing with him again. This was what a wifey I know. Back to a Pepper and Lacus. It somehow developed into something, exciting. Lacus stuttered a little with a slightly red face. Yeah, Pepper nodded, her face completely red. The two sisters were originally sleeping, but when they heard Ruby's voice in the mansion, they quickly woke up and went after the younger sister. They were missing Ruby so much, but they didn't expect them to see this scene. Somehow I'm feeling that seeing this scene it's going to come back and bite my ass in the future, Pepper spoke with a grim face. Lacus was silent. She knows Pepper's instincts are usually correct. Soon she shrugs as if it's not important. Well, he won't hurt us. After all, we're related to his wife, and we didn't do any harm to Ruby. She understood a little of what Victor's personality was like. In simple words, to understand, Victor was like their mother. Fuck! Now that Lacus thought about it, he really had their mother's personality, and if one thing their mother knew how to do was tease people when she wanted to. But despite not liking to be bothered, Lacus was a little expectant about what Victor was going to do with them. Sister, stop NTR fetish, Pepper spoke into Lacus's ear. Ka! Lacus was startled by the sudden voice and yelled in a surprisingly cute voice. She looked at Pepper. What are you doing? Suddenly, her face turned a little red. I don't have an NTR fetish. Fun, fun. Pepper stares at Lacus in a way cute. What? How do you know what NTR is? After all, that wasn't a word ordinary people knew. Lacus used her right to remain silent.